Everybody, welcome back to the channel. Today I want to be showing you guys how I built this drill charging station from the set of plans. I make a couple of mistakes along the way. I attempt to correct them, but overall I think it turned out pretty well. So let's go through it and I'll show you what I did. I also wanted to give a special shout out for Rob and Willie for supporting the channel and watching all my videos. Thank you guys so much, and I hope you guys enjoy this one too. That's what I'm making. Looks like that. So, I got these plans from johnmalecki.com. It comes with everything you need. It tells you what your materials are, what kind of tools you're going to need, all your measurements, everything. And which is kind of nice. So we're going to go through this step by step. I've got a full sheet of plywood here, and then I've got a sheet of hardwood ply over here for the faces. It's actually kind of cool. They give you color coded, like green is the hardwood, and that I don't know what color is that, peach or something. That's the softwood. I'm gonna be using the AccuCut by Craig Tools. This is basically turns your skill saw into a table saw, make accurate, nice straight cuts, which is what we're gonna need. But we'll go through this step by step. And first thing I'm gonna do is this is your plywood parts list. So I'm gonna go through and I'm gonna take and measure and draw out all these pieces and then cut them out. And then we'll move on to the hardwood after that. Once all the pieces are cut out, then we'll assemble it. All right, I'm gonna lay out and cut my dados right now, and the way I'm gonna do this, the instructions say every 4 inches you have a 3/4 inch dados because that's the thickness of the wood. So what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna start by measuring the end, 4 1/8 the inside, and then I'm gonna use a piece of scrap that I've cut that just happened to be the length of this piece, and I'm using that as my gap. So essentially what I'm going to do, I'm going to measure 4 1/8 from the edge, mark it, take my speedy square, draw a line, then I'm going to take my piece here, line it up. I'm going to use the square as a backstop, so that way I know it's straight, and then draw a line there. And then that is going to be the thickness, and I'll do that all the way down until I have everything set. So it'll be 4 inches, dados, 4 inches, dados, 4 inches, dados, all the way down until I'm done. Then when I get ready to cut these, what I'm going to want to do is cut and put the saw blade just on the inside of each one of these lines, because I want to account for the thickness of the saw blade. I don't want to leave too much wiggle room here, because you want the pieces that are going in those to be kind of snug. Remember, you can always take more wood away. You can't add to it after you've cut it. So. Alright, so I'm getting ready to set up the dados for the table saw to cut those notches out. So when you get a dados blade, it comes with all these different bits that are called chippers. And it gives you a chart and tells you how many to put in for what thickness and all that stuff. So you can sit here and you can calculate. The blade is 1/16, this is an 1/8, so 2/8, that's a 1/4 and a 1/16, yada yada, and you can add it all up. Or alternatively, what I'm going to do is I'm going to set a scrap piece of wood, the same one I've been using to mark out my dados, and I'm going to set that next to the blade, and I'm going to add these chippers on here until I think it's close, and then I'm going to put the last blade on top and kind of look at it from down here to see if it matches up. And I feel like that's a little bit, well, that might be just about right. Let's see here. Let's see here if I take one away and put the 16th on instead of the 8th. And see what that looks like. See, now that's underneath it now. That's going to be too small. It's hard to say though. It's awfully close. So the rule of thumb being that you can always take more wood away. I might do that to start out with. And if that doesn't work for my first cut, put another blade on it. So I'm going to do that. So anyway, you can do math. I hate math. Or you can do like that and just kind of eyeball it, which what I'm going to do. I did forget to mention is when you're stacking the chipper blades on here, you don't just pile them on top of each other like that. You want to put them at 90-degree staggers and stagger them everywhere in between the gaps, so that way you don't have a weird rotation or like a weird vibration. It's going to be a bit heavier obviously because you got more blades on top of it, but at least this will be a little more even. So I stick the first blade on there, kind of eyeball it, and then when you stick the second blade on there, put it at a 90 degree, and you just keep going like that until you've got the number of blades you need bolted on. Okay, so before I go and start just cutting out all these without even thinking about it, I'm going to take a test scrap piece of wood here. I'm going to cut one out and then see how it fits, see if I need to adjust anything before I keep going. The instructions tell you you want to cut it about 1/3 of the thickness of the material, which I am going to set about right there. And then just run it through and then see how it fits. Okay, there's my first street cut on my test piece, and nope, that's not gonna do it, is it? Okay, I took the 16th out and I put an 1/8 in, and that should be just right for that cut. Let's see how we do now. Okay, let's see how we did. Oh yeah, that is perfect. Okay, new plan. My table saw is not long enough to accommodate this long piece and cut it accurately. So I have taken my dado saw off the table saw, removed my miter saw blade off, installed my dados blade on the miter saw because I can sit here and control the depth and everything. So a couple things though I had to do. One, the full 3/4 inch doesn't fit on here. Because the stud is not long enough. However, since I can watch it cut and control it, I can make a couple passes without going over, which is perfect. Second thing I had to do was, you can set the depth of cut by using this tool on the side here. However, since my saw blades are so small compared to what the miter saw blade is, it doesn't go down that far. It goes all the way to the stop. But the stop is too far. So I added a piece of this thick tape I've got here, this double-sided sticky tape, and that actually set me to the perfect depth. So now I can run this across my miter saw, watch each cut nice and easy, and be secure in the fact that I know that I can watch it cut, and I know it's going to be perfect every time. So plan B. You guys want to see what happens when you put the chipper blades on backwards? That's what happens. You'll know right away. You start going down and you hear this weird sound and you smell burning wood. That's when you know you had a blade on backwards. Don't be like me. Put it on right the first time. All right, flipped it over. I did the top side, just 3 cuts, just like this. 1, 2, 3. This is the bottom side we did first, so this piece is finished. So now I'm gonna move on to pieces A and B. It looks like I have to get some diagonal cuts here, diagonal cuts there, and another dados running down the center of between the two. Okay, I got my dados marks all marked up on these pieces A and B here. It wants me to cut these at an angle, but what I want to do first is cut the dados first because I don't want to have to change the saw blade out. Since this is the last dados cut I have, at least I believe this is the last dados cut I have, I'm going to do those first, then I can change the saw blade back out to my normal miter saw blade and then cut those angles out afterwards. I lied, I needed one more dados cut. In part labeled F, you gotta cut one in the center. That is for that guy right there. So we've already cut the 3 here, you just need to cut the 1 for the center there. Now parts A and B we're working on are these ones here, A, and then the insides for B. We're getting ready to cut the slopes on those next. Okay, so for the angle cut on parts, you got 2 A's, you got 2 B's, and you want to slope them like a roof. You're gonna mark 3 inches down, which I've done over here. I've got marked 3 inches, and then you're gonna go all the way to the corner, and then do the same on this side, mark 3 inches, and go all the way to the corner. Okay, so one thing I don't have is a planer, and the instructions call for a planer to help keep multiple items straight and true. So I've improvised a bit. It's very crude, but I've got all my G pieces. There's several of these G pieces that need to go in, and they're all supposed to be cut the exact same. And of course, when you cut these out, it's not perfect. There's always variances, slight variances. So I got a giant C clamp right here. You might have the clamps for the wood clamps, the proper ones. This is not proper. This is just what I have. Clamp them all together. Get 2 sides square, and then the other 2 sides, you can use your miter saw and cut down straight and true. So it may not, every piece may not be exactly to the spec in the sheet, but as long as every one of them is exactly the same, you still should be fine as long as it's not too far off from the instructions. So that's just what I did, and then I took it over to my belt sander and sanded it down on the edges. So this will be as straight and true as possible here. So I think this is kind of an important step. I probably should invest in a planer or something, or maybe get better at cutting, but this is kind of my fix for that. All right, the next step is to pre-drill the holes for these pieces to go in these slots. So you're gonna drill 3 holes for 3 different screws. You're gonna countersink them, and you're gonna glue these pieces in here, and then screw the screws in. I kind of moved it over to my larger workbench here. I needed more surface area. We're already starting to see it come to life here, come to shape, closer to the end product. But I've already run into a problem, so not sure yet how I'm going to fix it, but I've noticed that my measurements are slightly off on this end. I need to basically expand the dados over, and then at that point it's not going to really do its job because it's going to be so wide. Alright, so what I did to remedy my issue was I set my little portable skill saw to that depth there, and just basically kind of ripped it until I had it all sorted out and closer. But now the problem is I have this gap right here, and it's not the hugest problem. I could probably wedge something down in there and make it even, which I might actually do. But it's going to be glued and screwed from the bottom and then screwed from the top. But now I got it perfectly square here and square there. So for now, problem resolved. I don't know, maybe small potatoes. I probably could have prevented this by maybe a little more closely measuring. Some of you guys at home were probably screaming at me, talking about, I would have done this, I would have done that. That's fine. It's my first time building this thing, so. Alright, got a piece in there. Pretty happy with that. I just cut a thin slice out with my miter saw, sanded it down, kind of wedged it in there, glued it in, and it's a different color, but it's flat. You know, looks good, right? Okay, anyway, moving on. That structure is now done. I got to get the letter A pieces here on both ends. And then after that, I can put the back and the roof piece on. And once that's done, I can start cutting out the hardwood pieces for the facing. Okay, back up one step. A's don't go on next. It's the backing that goes up against the walls next. So I'm gonna run a bead of glue, stick the backing on, and then when the backing's on, we have to make sure just a bit of this is poking out, because the sides, the dados that was cut there will go, and it'll go over that, so the backing will butt up against the side this way, not the backing over the top of this. The backing goes, or the side goes against the backing, you know, that way. You'll see what I mean. Alright, so I'm looking at this, I'm looking at the instructions, and I'm trying to figure out why it's got me with this lip here all the way down. There's this like part that jets out, and I thought maybe when I did the hardwood that it would kind of make sense, but it doesn't. Looking at the instructions here, it looks like all the face of it is kind of even and flat without a protruding edge. So I don't know what went wrong. I don't know where I measured wrong. I felt like I followed it pretty good. So whatever, I'm gonna change it up. Okay, I'm over here cutting the hardwood out now. All the trim pieces for the face of the cabinet is 3/4 of an inch, because you're going around the trim anyway, because all the pieces are 3/4 of an inch, so that's easy. And then all you have to do is pay attention to the measurement. Now it gives you measurements on here, but if you're like me and you're not perfect, it's better to measure on the unit to see where the pieces go first before cutting and using these measurements, because they might be off by 1/4 inch or so. Mm-hmm.
In Belgium, is it almost bedtime for them?
Yeah, probably. Finished product. I think it looks pretty good. I think it's pretty close to how the instructions say. At this point I could stain it, I could paint it, I could do whatever, but my cousin just wants to leave it as is, and he'll do the rest from here. So I'm happy with it. I probably could have done a couple things a little bit better. I probably could have measured it a little bit better, but overall it's going to do the job very well. So anyway, if you guys like what I do on the channel, please consider subscribing, and also every once in a while please hit that like button for me. We'll see you guys in the next one.